Welcome to the Midweek Mailbag, your Detroit Lions midweek podcast where we answer all of your Detroit Lions questions. We are recording this Wednesday, is that right? Wednesday, April 16th, which makes us 8 days away from the NFL draft. If you're listening to this on our podcast feed or watching a replay on YouTube or Twitch, that means it's most likely a week until the 2025 NFL draft. So unsurprisingly, we're going to talk a lot about the NFL draft. My name, of course, is Jeremy Reisman. I am the producer over at Pride of Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online. On socials with me is the general manager of Pride of Detroit for at least another week, another 8 days before we demote you, transfer you to managing editor.
Sure. Whatever we want to do with the title, that's fine by me.
You can find him at Erik Schlitt on Twitter. It's Erik Schlitt. Erik, the grid index is in. Your board is almost finalized. Can you feel? Can you see the finish line in the distance here?
Oh yeah. I'm at a point where I'm just waiting for a couple other people to do what they need to do in order to take the final step, and then I'll be able to finally get some sleep. No more 1 a.m. bedtimes for me. I'm gonna go to bed nice and early, like the old man that I am.
Yeah. Well, what's your normal time? Like 11:45?
Yeah, around that.
Yeah, right. You aren't the early bird special at Country Kitchen Buffet yet.
No, but
not of that age.
The kids make you. The kids make you get up at unusual times.
That's true.
School's a lot of fun. So, right?
Sure, absolutely. Anyways, let's why tarry no further? Let's get into some of the questions here. First one comes from BK Shaky on Twitter. Asks, what position group besides the wide receivers do you think the Lions are not in a hurry to increase their payroll on?
Didn't you just do a breakdown of the positional spending, if I recall? I thought you did like an analysis. It was a couple weeks ago, so it's probably feels like 2 months ago.
Yeah, you're right.
Time moves
it does
this time of year.
Absolutely.
But I feel like they've been pretty balanced. I guess is the right word, across the board. Like they haven't really tried to overspend in any one area. They've addressed contracts when they've needed to. They've tried to get younger through the draft to counteract some of those. I don't think there's really like a position, and even wide receiver. Like they still have three wide receivers that are amongst the top 15 cap hits on their roster this year, right? So like I think they've done a good job with the balance that they have. They have a lot invested in their offensive line, but that's purposeful because that's the core of their team. But beyond the offensive line, they've been pretty frugal in how they've spent their money, and very deliberate in how they've decided to have cap hits hit at certain times. And so I don't think there's necessarily a right answer for this. So if you have one, I'm interested to hear, because I don't really have a good answer.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is clearly, obviously, stemming from the quotes from Brad Holmes regarding Jameson Williams' extension. Like, hey, that's an expensive position. I'm not sure.
Sure.
I'm not sure I'm ready to commit to that at this point. And so when I look at, future extensions, maybe future big payments that are due at certain positions, I think about, okay, which ones are they lining up to give out that extension? Which one are they thinking maybe they need to just get younger at and avoid paying that? And I look at linebacker, and it's kind of like split, right? Where Jack Campbell's going to get paid. I'm
Correct.
Feeling probably pretty confident that Jack Campbell's going to get paid. But what does that mean about Alex Anzalone? That's a tougher conversation to have, especially considering you just paid Derek Barnes. Are you willing to pay 3 linebackers a big amount of money at once? I think the answer is probably no. And so,
especially when you only play 2.5, right.
And so it's why, like, I know they have a million linebackers right now. I know they're 4 deep in starting caliber guys right now, but with Jack Campbell's payment coming due. I think there's questions about whether Alex Anzalone will be on the roster. There's a question about whether Malcolm Rodriguez will be on the roster. And so you can start planning for that now if you want, if the opportunity arises, which is why we've had conversations about Jihad Campbell. The other position that I think you can have this conversation about is cornerback, because that's another one that Brad Holmes mentioned specifically about, hey, this is pricey. We went into free agency this year knowing like, cornerbacks are expensive. It was a $16 million a year starting point, and luckily they were able to find a guy at $16 million a year. But are they going to pay two guys at that level? Because once it's time to pay Terrion Arnold, that's kind of when DJ Reed comes off the books, or at least maybe there's a year overlap. But I think you can make it so that Arnold's contract is still going to be cheap by the time you're paying DJ Reed's final year. And so at that point, again, you're looking at this crossroads. Do you go out and spend a lot in free agency, or do you kind of offset Terrion Arnold's contract if you are going to give him an extension? Obviously, I don't think they've come close to making that decision yet. But like that's another one where I think it's probably too early to invest young in that position, considering you just drafted two guys last year. But I think that's one where I think they are going to be very calculated in how they manage the camp, because they know that is an expensive position. But it's one that they value.
It's interesting because they're going to have to, this next offseason, they're going to have to make some decisions on players who are getting older, right?
Yes.
And they're not quite in that spot now, because right now they only have 10 players that are 30 and over of their, 80 that they have on the roster, right? Only 10 of them are 30 years old or over, and 6 of them are just barely 30. Right. So like it's really 4 players that are like getting to a point where you're like, oh, all right, I got to start paying attention to these guys. But then, a year from now, those 6 guys that are 30 are all going to be 31. And now you're starting to get a little bit into it. You're starting to get into a gray area, and you're going to have to start making decisions on what you want to do with those guys. That's, some of them are going to come off the book organically. Others, it seems like maybe they've been making preparations for.
Yep. Sticking with wide receiver here really quick, we're going to touch a little bit on JMO. That was kind of about JMO, but this one's a little bit more direct about JMO, and this is just kind of a technical question that we can knock out pretty quick here. Ryan Anton on Twitter asked, if JMO were to get traded after receiving the 5th-year option, would the entire $15.49 million be dead cap against the Lions?
No, sorry. I got confused there for a second because I was because yes, they haven't picked it up. Okay, so they're gonna pick up the 5th-year option, then that becomes fully guaranteed. What becomes fully guaranteed is the base salary.
Correct.
It's not like a bonus, right?
Yep.
So when a base salary is fully guaranteed, that travels with the contract, right?
Yep.
So if they guarantee, or if they do add the 5th year in, it does become fully guaranteed, and then they trade them. They don't have a cap hit assigned with that.
Yep. I think the fully guaranteed part is where people get confused, because guaranteed money, they're like, oh, guaranteed money stays with the original team, but salary always travels with the new team, unless the trading team decides to pick some of that up voluntarily. They don't have to. That's not how trades typically work, but a guaranteed salary travels with that team, and now that team cannot get out of that salary, right? They can't cut him. That salary is on their books permanently or whatever. So yeah.
The only way it would count against the Lions cap is like if you just said, if the Lions were to have cut him instead of trade him, then they would incur a cap hit.
Yep. And I think that's all we're going to touch on the JMO stuff, because I think we're both in agreement. You can have Jameson Williams trade talks in 2026. No point in having them now. That's where we're going to leave it at. Let's move on to some draft questions here. Between the numbers, Anthony, who absolutely deserves a shout out before we even get into his question for all the incredibly hard work he did for our grit index stuff. I shouldn't even say our. I didn't do a damn thing about it. Yours and Anthony's grit index, which has been rolling out in Pride of Detroit. I think it's really impressive work, really fun read. And if you haven't seen it, I'm going to give you a second to just promote it and tell people what it's about, in case our podcast audience hasn't seen the written stuff over on the site.
All right. Basically, we're 3 years into an idea that Anthony and I discussed back in 2023 about how to try and conceptualize what grit means and how to quantify it. It's really an unquantifiable thing, but we're trying to come up with the best solution that we could in order to try and put a value on something that is not easily definable, right? So it's evolved and we've expanded our source pool. We've tried to create a larger pool of information where we gather sources so that it kind of offsets some of those inconsistencies. And then we've done data collection. We assign weights to different analysts. So a person like Dane Brugler holds his voice carries more weight than somebody else who just happens to write a profile. And so, eventually what you end up with is you collect the data, put it into the formula that we have, and it spits out a number. We then scale the number up on a scale between 0 and 100, and then it can give the average reader an idea of kind of where a person falls in the conversation, based on all the information that's out there. And so we've done the way we arrange the scale is kind of like, you can visualize it kind of like you would a draft pick, right? Like there's only a handful of guys that are going to be at the top, right? This year there's 16. Last year there was 12. Then there's a big group of the second tier and third tier and fourth tier and fifth tier, right? And so it's open. Now we're starting to, show those grades, show those grit scores. And we've done a full release of the offense. So all the offense is out there on Pride of Detroit. Defense starts on Thursday, and it's again going to show you or give you an idea of like, hey, what late round guys are being talked about in a manner that fits with the ideology of what the Lions are looking for from a character standpoint.
Yep.
This isn't like about how they play on the field. This is just character, work ethic, passion, intelligence, leadership, all that kind of stuff. And so you have to, it's just one piece of the puzzle, right? Yep. I'm not going to put the board out and be like, these are the top 12 guys, right. In the draft, right? And then just like Kent with his Raz isn't going to say these are the top guys, it's all part of that data collection. And so when you combine what you see on film and the athletic portion and the grit portion, hopefully you can get an idea of what a player's profile looks like. And then hopefully you can then narrow down your focus on the types of guys that Brad Holmes should be looking at.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we treat it as like a pass-fail for the Lions. Like if you fail this, then you're not on the Lions draft board. And I think this does a good job highlighting of the fact that it's a spectrum, right? Like there are going to be strengths and weaknesses of everyone. It's not like you have grit or you don't. It's, okay, this guy's pretty gritty. This guy's mad gritty. And and it does a good job highlighting that. And it's an imperfect science, but I like the fact that you guys are tweaking it every year, trying to make it better every year. And the results have been pretty good so far in terms of like predicting guys that this team likes because they do value football character more than some other teams do. So I would say keep an eye on a lot of those guys that are on those higher tiers of the grit index. But let's get into Anthony's question here, who asks, who is the best grit plus villain fit for the Lions on day one, and why is it Emeka Egbuka?
So this is actually a concept that we toyed around with trying to introduce this year. Okay. But we did so many other new things and leveled it up like so many more steps. Like I was like, there's no way we're going to be able to finalize that. So we're talking about maybe incorporating that next year. And we have to, figure it out how it's going to work. But essentially it's like, remember, what is a villain? A villain is a guy who he has a superpower that like makes other teams concerned, right? Like he has something that other teams have to account for.
Right.
and you have to have this athleticism component. You have to have the something like really special and unique, and then you also have to be able to have that grit component as well. And then I think all of those combined kind of makes that special player that ends up, being Amon-Ra St. Brown or whoever,
Right.
right? And with Emeka here, he is he's got a like a 9.7 RAS, right? So the athletic components there. He's one of the 16 tier two or I'm sorry, tier one grit guys. Um, his work ethic and leadership, all that stuff, is all off the charts. And he's just redundant to Amon Ra. And so I don't know how great of a fit he is in Detroit, but I think you could do something with two Amon-Ra St. Browns, right? Like,
Right.
like I think that would be fun. And so, yeah, Abuka is this highly talented receiver, and while he is not 6'4" like McMillan, and
Yeah.
he's not like he doesn't run a 4.29 like Golden, he has very little flaws. There are very little flaws to his game. He's consistent, he's reliable, and he could be a problem at the next level. And so that he very much highlights everything that goes into like what Brad Holmes is probably looking for. At the same time, it's not a super clean fit like with some of the other, you
Right.
know, top guys.
Yeah. I I was tempted to bring Shamar into the conversation as a guy that like is definitely the villain type where it's just like he's a guy that you're gonna have to account for. I know he didn't, not to
Yeah.
spoil too many things on your grid index that haven't been released yet, but I know he's a middle tier guy rather than a high tier guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I still kind of use, and I know this isn't Brad's definition of villain, but it's kind of the one that I like using with him, because the whole villain thing really hit its peak in 2023 when they became villains of the media, right? Oh my God, I can't
Right.
believe they picked a running back. Oh my God, I can't believe they picked a linebacker, a nickel, or whatever, a tight end. Your first four picks are all low value positions. So I think the villain pick combined with grit pick would be Jihad Campbell. Oh my God, you just took another linebacker in the first round 2 years after you did it before. You have 15 linebackers on your team.
Right.
You have three starters. You have a fourth that starter. I mean, I just outlined why it would kind of make sense to start preparing and getting younger at the linebacker position, so it wouldn't throw me off. But like, Jihad is that one that's lingering in the back of my head where I'm just like, I know it would be weird. I know they'd probably get hammered on draft night. I think Lions fans in general would be okay with it because he brings the pass rushing element to his game, but he's still
Yes.
probably more off-ball linebacker than he is edge rusher, edge defender, which would probably drive some national outlets insane. And so that to me brings the villain back in it. And I think I haven't seen your linebacker grit ratings, but I have to imagine he's pretty high up there.
I'm not gonna spoil it.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's move to the next question here then. Come from Bailey PB. Says, I know you've talked about him a little bit before and Erik has mocked him to us, but can you talk a little bit more about Donovan Ezeraiku and how he may or may not be a fit? Could he develop into a full-time defensive end, or would he project as just an outside linebacker designated pass rusher?
I think as a rookie, that's the role he would fall into, as kind of a base. He can be a base edge rusher, like in situations where you're in a sub package. He can be a dedicated pass rusher from a stand up linebacking spot.
Yep.
Those are all elements that you would expect him to play as a rookie, and he would play probably like half the snaps, I'd say, at least, right? He'd play a ton. And so the missing parts to his game are essentially like edge setting, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just because he's a little bit undersized, and so he's good against the run. He's a good tackler, and he's really efficient at being able to get off his blocks. And so he has the elements to his game where if he can just add some NFL strength, spend a year in the weight room, by 2026, B, he could have 10 pounds of muscle and then all of a sudden he's a stud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it works that way sometimes. Like Hutchinson wasn't, he's gained 10 pounds in muscle, since his college days. Like it's not uncommon for these guys to do it. But like, while he is a bit undersized, he's still very similar to some of the edge rushers that they have under contract right now.
Yeah.
Al-Quadin Muhammad, Mitchell Agude, Nate Lynn. Those guys are all about the same weight. They're a couple pounds heavier. But height wise, I think only Agude is a little bit taller than him. So it's not like it's completely foreign to the Lions to see a guy like Ezraku and be like, oh, I don't know what we're going to do with him. He's not James Mitchell. Like he's bigger.
James
he's more
Houston.
Polished. James Houston. Thank you. He's bigger. He's more polished. There's more run elements to his game. Like he's more solidified. And so realistically, you could put him in that kind of pass rushing role, and depending on how he gains weight, depending on how fast he learns, he could be starting like halfway through the season type of thing. Like the ceiling's really there for him. He's just needs to get a little bit stronger, a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the one thing that kind of separates him from some of those guys that are similar to his size on the Lions roster is his arm length, right? He's got massive arms. He's and that's what makes him competitive in the run game right now. Even though he doesn't have that size, even though he doesn't necessarily have the edge setting power, he can still use his hands and his length. And that's not something that the Lions obsess about, right? Aiden has short arms, right? It's not something that's necessary, but it's a way to compensate. It's a way to win. Like you can win with power and size, or you can win with arm length. And right now he's still winning with arm length, which means he's not necessarily going to be that big of a negative in the run game. He's not going to be a liability in the run game. Right. But he does need to build on that size. And I think there's legitimate questions as whether he can add that on his relatively small frame, right? It's not even 6'3". It's hard to add some, like you can get stronger. You can add some pounds to that, but like I think there's a limit to what you can add onto that frame. So I get the concern, but I feel like if you're searching for the prototype every single time, there's just not many guys out there that are the prototype, and you can make some hedges elsewhere if those guys can win in different ways, and he can win in different ways.
Yeah, he's going to come in. He's going to be the same height as Josh Paschal, right? Now, Pascal's a little bit more broad, but that doesn't mean that he's also like 268 or something like that, right? Like,
right.
You don't need Ezraku to put on 20 pounds. You just can you get more muscle? Stop eating fast food, right? Just be in the NFL weight room. Like, and it happens with these guys all the time, especially from rookie to sophomore year.
Next question here comes from Old Christopher, or Old Christopher, if it's pronounced that way. It says, it's a copycat league. Can you see a run in the first round on the defensive line?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, he's absolutely right. Interior penetration is what helped the Eagles win the Super Bowl, and that's all anyone wants this year. That's what people are talking about. It's like, who's going to get you that? How are you going to find it? And while this is a very deep defensive tackle class, it's unique in the fact that there's a lot more run stuffers than there normally are.
Yeah.
Normally that's a skill that is not, you don't often see at this level, this many guys come out of college with this level of run stuffing. And you're going to have a handful of guys that are just going to be like just pure pass rushers, and they're going to get drafted higher than they would in a normal year. But I really think the value is going to be the guys that can do both. And there's only a couple of them, right? There's only a couple of those guys, Mason Graham, Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan. And if you want to add Kenneth Grant in there, I think you can too. But like those four guys at the top, they should all go in the first round based on the copycat league that we live in.
I do think obviously there could and probably will be a run on defensive linemen. I'll probably push back on saying it's because it's a copycat league. I I mean, I think you just look
Oh,
at
yeah,
the trends,
it's just
trends of the league. Like, it's been that way forever, right? Edges have always been
right.
extremely valued. Defensive tackle, as of like 2 or 3 years ago, was a $20 million per year position if you got an elite guy. And so, I mean, it's copycat in that sense that, Chris Jones won the Super Bowl for the Chiefs 2 years ago.
Right.
People notice that.
Little hard to find Chris Joneses though.
Yes, exactly. but I think what you brought up was interesting, and I'm curious if maybe things start heading in that direction, and that is with run defenders. As we're kind of seeing the resurgence of the run game, is there going to be a higher value placed on run stuffers? Now, I never expect it to be an elite position because I think it's still the overwhelming belief is that this is a passing league, and if you can get to the quarterback, that's the most valuable thing you can do as a defensive lineman. But we know the Lions value run defense, and that has helped them out in some cases. It helped them out a lot last year. It helped them in previous years to like keep their head above water. And obviously their defense wasn't the best the first 3 years, with a kind of good run defense, but as they were able to build out some of the other parts of their defense, build out a secondary, suddenly you saw the value in the run defense. You're getting teams in 3rd and longs. You're getting turnovers on those 3rd and longs. And so I am curious if there are going to be some teams that are like, we need to stop the run. The Bears are a great example. They couldn't stop the run worth anything last year. Now they have Ben Johnson, a guy who absolutely knows the value of establishing the run and stopping the run. Is that a team that starts learning that? The Packers, I mean, I could run down the NFC North teams because the Vikings added a couple defensive tackles, but none of them are good at stopping the run. The Packers have never valued stopping the run. And I'm just curious, when are we going to hit critical mass where people are like, okay, we should probably do this now. We should probably address this. We should probably start valuing it at least a little bit.
It's funny, like with the Packers, they had one like nose tackle, Slayton, and they just let him go this offseason. Like and they didn't replace him with, I don't know, maybe they'll get someone in the draft, but you're right. They have their own kind of philosophy, which is very strange when you're in a division with the Lions, who want to punch you in the throat and have been punching you in the throat for the past several years. And you just are like, cool, we'll just take 2 losses.
All right, let's take a break there while we're punching down on the NFC North. They say you're not supposed to punch down, but when you're the Detroit Lions and back-to-back NFC North champions, you can punch down for once.
Yeah, no, a lot. I'm not done.
All right, when we come back, more of your Detroit Lions draft questions as we edge closer and closer to the 2025 NFL Draft. We'll be right back. Okay. What's up, everybody? A couple alerts to get through here, and then we'll answer some of your guys' live questions. So if you're in the YouTube or Twitch chat live watching us approximately 7:35 p.m. Eastern right now on Wednesday night, we can answer some of your questions. First, though, Daskib, thank you. The 42-month subscribed to the channel on Twitch. Appreciate you. Rise the Beast, another $2 donator. By the way, Rise the Beast is like a consistent donator on YouTube, and I feel like I don't recognize it enough. Very much do appreciate that. YouTube is still one we're trying to figure out in terms of interaction, giving you guys what you want, things like that. But we're growing and growing on that platform, and I do appreciate all the support over there. Says, yay, I love the midweek mailbag. I'm sorry, Jeremy. I probably should have read the message before I handed out all those compliments. Nick the Greek 100-bit says, which non-POD beat reporter has the highest grit score, and why is it obviously Burkett?
Which non-POD reporter has the highest grit score? Oh, that's a great question.
If we count Nick Baumgartner, I'm going to say him because he's a former offensive lineman. Also, since I mentioned him, spoiler alert, Pride Detroit Direct subscribers, we have a first bite with Nick Baumgartner coming later this week. We literally just recorded it about 2 hours ago, and it's fantastic. If you
Hold on.
aren't familiar, go ahead, take care of whatever's happening over there. If you don't know Nick Baumgartner, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, he is one of, I think, 2 or 3 guys at The Athletic who work on the NFL draft specifically. He works hand in hand with Dane Brugler. We're going to talk about Dane Brugler and his mock a little bit later. But Nick is also local. He covered University of Michigan for several years. For a while, he was a co-beat writer for the Detroit Lions with Chris Burke. He still drops in every now and then to cover the team with Colton Pouncey. He does a great podcast with Colton Pouncey. But anyways, we got him on the podcast. We talked about everything pretty much with the draft, and I think you guys are going to like it a lot if you're a Pride of Detroit direct subscriber. And if you're not, prideofdetroit.com/subscribe, and you can get access to that. You can get access to our First Bite episodes about the Lions free agent additions, and we're going to start the draft series, obviously, once they draft some guys too. So don't miss out on that. I don't know who else would be a gritty beat writer on the Lions.
I could make cases for all of them, really. I
can't make cases for any of them.
I mean, Ben is a freaking
I don't know why
wrestling announcer.
Yeah, Ben's got to be up
like,
there.
Right there alone, like he's 8 feet tall and he announces wrestling, right?
I know, but I know he's dealt with injuries. I think he's got a little back stuff. So do I.
You can't, but we're judging his heart here, man.
That's true. That's true. Ben does have a lot of heart. I should, in more ways than one.
Nolan's extremely passionate, like in everything he does. So
yeah,
he'd get scores for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Nolan's a great guy.
I think Colton would get a lot of bonus points in intelligence, right?
Sure. Yep.
You could give Justin leadership potential, right?
Yep.
Like there's all kinds. You can find ways to give all these guys have good grit.
And I think maybe that wasn't. I mean, it was made clear. I just don't know how many people read it. But I think when people hear grit and your grit index, all they're thinking is like, who's physical. Like who runs into people a lot? Who engages in contact? Who runs people over? Who's crazy about football? Which is part. I mean, those things are part of it, but like the intelligence factor, the leadership factor, things like that, I think are overlooked.
Work ethic is huge. Dependability, like those are massive traits, right?
Right, and all of those things I think matter to the Lions. It's just I think sometimes when you get obsessed with does he scream a lot? Is he a linebacker with a neck brace thing? Like that image of gritty. Like
Jared Goff. Someone in the comment section said Jared Goff wouldn't make your grit list, and I'm thinking like, yeah, he would.
Yeah, that's like I saw that too, and I'm like, I actually went back and looked at some of his 2026 scouting reports. I couldn't find any that were talking specifically about his intelligence, but I know that was one of his best traits.
But think about the bottom of the barrel that he was at when he got traded, and like to be able to pick himself up from that, like they
were a 1 in 10 program when he took over.
Yeah, and he just had to endure.
Yeah,
right. He works hard. He's very, he's dependable. Like it's there's a lot. I mean, like guys like Amon-Ra and Khalif, like they just never stop working. Like those are easy to see. It's some of the other stuff it's a little bit harder.
Yeah, I think the challenging thing from your aspect here is that naturally speaking, there's just going to be more written about the top prospects, right?
Yes, which is and so the way that we've tried to counter that is through the weighted system.
Yeah.
Analysts who evaluate more players, their voice carries more weight.
Right.
If you are a analyst who has good information, that also you've shown like you can be reliable on a consistent basis year after year, you're going to get so we it's not like we weighted just on like three things. We had four different things that we evaluated each analyst on, and then we assigned point systems, and then they were like, you get one for this, you get point four for this, you get point two for, and then so if you evaluate more players, your word goes up more.
Right.
And so that's how we've tried to offset. We've also tried to dig into other articles that aren't just like top 100 lists or top 50 lists. It's
Right.
like Feldman's Freak Index.
Yep.
You got boatloads of players from all over, regardless of draft stock. Um, what's his name from ESPN? The guy that does Matt, is it Matt Bowen?
Matt Miller?
No. Not a draft analyst.
Oh.
Why am I blanking?
Matt Bowen
on
is
that?
a guy there.
Yeah, he does the yeah, Matt Bowen. Yeah, he does the show on Saturdays. Right? You know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
The film analyst with all right. Bowen Bowen is he does when he writes articles,
Yeah.
he doesn't write articles like rankings. He writes these are the intangibles. Like who's the best this guy. Who's the best, and he has a whole range of different guys. So like he's going to get more value because he's covering a broader spectrum of players, but maybe he doesn't get as high of a score in a different area. And so it's like it's trying to get those all over.
Yeah.
So no, it's not a Brugler scale. I use Brugler because he's the most common one, but it's not Brugler. I think Brugler accounts for like he has the most weight, but like Lance Zierlein, he grades 300 some players as well. Like he's been doing it a long time. There's consistency here. He's going to be way up there. Daniel Jeremiah will do 150. Like there's value there as opposed to someone who's just doing like 50. So we've tried to do our best to find articles that are talking about player 250 as much as player 50.
Yeah. Good question here from Bart in Sterling Heights, and we're gonna touch a little bit more on it during the show, but I wanna touch on it a little now. It says, do Lions save money and trade out of the first with an early second round team that wants a quarterback on a 5-year deal so we can sign our own players? I don't think that should be the primary motivation because one, it's not that big of a difference. And also if you want to make an argument about saving money, I would say maybe having that 5th year on a rookie deal might actually turn out to be cheaper than having 4 years on a high second round pick contract. But I think there is still an argument to be made about having, like, if you trade down, you get an extra pick, right? You get an extra, whatever, 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick. And that gives you another player on a rookie deal. And so now you have two cheap contracts instead of one. In that sense, that does make some sense. The tricky part, though, is at what point are you hitting the point of no return where you're drafting guys who aren't going to make this team? Because that's going to be a thing very soon, probably this year, depending on how many day 3 picks they have. And so if you trade down from 28 to 36, 8 spots, and you pick up a 5th for it, let's say, I don't know what the value of that actually is. It's probably more than that. But let's say you pick up a 5th, draft a 5th round guy, doesn't make the team. Was that trade worth it? Probably not. I'm not saying like Brad Holmes can't draft a 5th round pick who will make the team, but we're just getting to that point where it's like, and this is a conversation we actually had with Nick Baumgartner a little bit for Pride to Trade Tech. It was like, is this team going to bother with late day 3 picks anymore? Because Brad is he's already kind of shown a propensity to get rid of some of those picks sometimes and to move up. Like when you're in the middle, like round 4. I feel like round 4 is kind of the last spot where you can probably be pretty certain that guy's going to make the team. After that, I'm not going to say it's a 50-50 split, but it's going to be tough for that player. And so if you're sitting there, they don't have a fifth, is that right? I think that's right.
They have 2 sevenths.
And no fifth.
Yeah, and they're missing a fifth, correct.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know, after that last 4th round pick, if he's getting a little itchy, like, it wouldn't surprise me or upset me at all. I know I'm not Mr. Trade up very often, but, like, you package both those 7s and a 6 to get into this 5th. Like, I think that makes sense for where they're at right now. There's not a lot of, to me, I don't think the Lions should have 2 7th round picks this year. I'd be very surprised if they use both 7th round picks on players. And listen, like, they're still going to fill out the roster with UDFAs, and those UDF, the Lions have had a UDFA make their roster how many years in a row now?
75, I think.
Right? Like, it's possible that, and we know Brad has actually drafted pretty well late day 3, all things considered. So I'm not saying he should take all the bolts out of that chamber, but we're getting to a point where it's just hard to justify those picks because they're not going to make your team. And maybe that means that they can still make your practice squad, but sometimes they won't do that either. The Lions have gotten to a point where the roster is so good that they won't have these spaces for developmental projects late in the draft like they did before. Like, Jerry Jacobs wouldn't make this team now. but he could back then.
He didn't make the team last 2 years.
Right. He didn't make any team. But like, that's the point. Like, these guys that we all kind of adored and were great stories back then because they did overcome a ton of odds, and they did provide some play that was better than expected. Those stories are going to be lesser and lesser just because the Lions don't have the room to develop those guys anymore.
Yeah.
All right.
I do wonder. No. I
was going to say that's the smallest reaction you've ever had to anything.
They want to go into camp with certain positions filled, right?
Yeah.
Like they want a certain amount of guys at each position, and so a lot of that will be, filling in those guys. Maybe it's with UDFAs and stuff like that, but like. It wouldn't surprise me at all if once they get to those last 3 picks, if they just kind of get treated like, okay, these are our UDFAs. We just happen to get to pick 3 of them. You know what I mean? And who knows? I mean, like, Brad hits these 6th-round picks like crazy.
No question.
Who knows what he could do? Like there could be something wacky. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, look at this guy who, really shouldn't be here. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'll take 2. I'll take 1 Wingo and 1 Mahogany, please. Those are guys that should have both gone higher. And then he'll just walk away and be content. And then they both make the team, and one of them's going to start. And all of a sudden everybody looks at Brad like he's a genius again. So,
yeah. And I mean, they traded up to get Wingo, right? That was a move up to get him.
Was it? I don't remember with Wingo.
I recently looked up all the trade ups, and it surprised me yet again to realize that they traded up 4 times last year. 4 times. Terrion, Gio.
How many times did they trade Sione,
and what we just said, Wingo. Yeah.
Wasn't the year before? Didn't they do like 8, but it was like split 4-4 or something like that?
No, it wasn't. So he's only traded up 8 times total.
What?
So half of them came last year, because he didn't do any trades. No, he did Derek Barnes in year 1. That was the only one.
Yeah, he traded like 4 picks to go up to get Derek Barnes, and then
it was JMO, and maybe only JMO in 2022, and then I think it was.
So they traded back a lot, didn't they?
Yes.
No, they just took that.
Well, in 2023,
it was the following year.
2023, they traded back twice, so it was twice early. So Gibbs, and then they traded up to get Brian Branch. But then they traded back when they eventually got Hendon Hooker. Was it twice?
Twice. Yeah. Yes. And then traded up for Broderick.
Yes.
And I thought there was a sixth trade though.
Well, they also
Maybe I'm
traded
just missing
they traded Swift during draft week too, so
it. No, I thought there was another one, but I might be
that
wrong.
was in the mix too.
Boy.
Yeah.
So
one trade up, one trade up, two trade up, four trades up.
I think
It's a concerning
of this story is don't get comfortable with where the Lions are picking.
Right.
Like if
But like this is the only time where I'm feeling like, okay, I get to trade up now. Like you have limited spots on the roster. I don't think there's a ton of value for this team anymore on day 3 or late day 3.
You know what we should do is we should look at who we think is in position. Now, I'm not saying it not right now, but we should look at who we think is in position to make the 53 and then be like, is there a guy like on day 3? How many of those day 3 guys could knock off one of like the bottom, like be an interesting exercise.
It would if I had a better understanding of how good some of these day 3 prospects are.
Well, I'll send you my board. The updated one.
That doesn't tell me how good they are. That just tells me how a bunch of people ranked them.
Well, I ranked them too. You just go off my rankings.
Okay, but you got to put the Lions' current roster on that list then. Where would Michael Neese get drafted right now?
Yeah, undrafted.
One Pride 0427, 24 months subscribed to the channel. Says 2 years rocking with POD. Thanks for all your effort, fellas. Thanks for hanging with us. I feel like I remember the first time you subscribed. I don't know why. I think part of it is because 0427, I assume, is April 27th, and I got an April birthday too. So I'm like, oh, a kindred April birthday. Shout out to the April birthday people this month. Not that obvious. 20 months subscribed to the channel, just behind One Pride 0427. Appreciate your support as well.
I think a Guacan makes a push at Michael Neese, by the way.
You love a Guacan.
It's a lot to like.
You just really like saying it. You really like that you eventually found out how to figure out how to say his name.
Oh, what a brutal journey that was.
My question: what teams are currently looking to trade back due to current number of picks, or they do not fancy a player? I mean, I don't
think anyone is looking to trade back.
Right.
Or I'm sorry, trade up.
Oh.
I don't think there's like many people that are like, oh, we got to trade up to go get this guy. And I think people are just like, I'll trade back, but like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people, calling to be like, hey, I'm going to give you a good deal. You know what I mean?
Right.
I expect most of the deals to be at a lower tier than what we've seen in previous years.
There's like, I feel like we have this conversation every year, and I don't know. I feel like it's not as real as it actually is, which is like once you get towards the end of the first round, team's going to want to jump up and grab their quarterback to get that 5th-year option.
Well, it happened with Lamar. So
yeah.
Now
how long ago was that?
Every year.
Right. Like, some people are thinking like you could do with Jalen Miller. Is Tyler Show? Is that how you say his name? I feel like I've seen like 3 or 4 people like, he's been rising up boards. He could be a sneaky first-round pick.
I think Teddy Bridgewater. Didn't they trade up for Teddy too?
I think he was definitely at the very end of the first round.
Well, the there you go.
Okay, so I mean, how long was there between Teddy Bridgewater?
Who
are we due?
Who was the Cleveland quarterback that they traded up for? I was so terrible.
I mean, there's a graveyard of Browns quarterbacks, so that is a hard
question
question for me to answer.
But they traded into like pick 21.
Whedon? Was it Brandon Whedon?
Yes. Very good memory. Nice job.
Phenoms.
Phenom. Yeah, that's great memory. They traded up to like pick 21 to get Whedon, and that was like because they couldn't trade in any other. It was, what a disaster that was.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's I understand the idea behind that, but I feel like that's really because if there's going to be trade ups in this draft, it feels like it's going to be into the top 15, right? Like we've talked about it several times how like there feels like a pretty significant drop off after that first 15 to 20 players.
Dude, it's such teams get such quarterback fever.
Yeah.
Like they really shouldn't be drafting that many quarterbacks in this class. Yet 4 of them could go. Like,
maybe,
as crazy
but
as it is.
But at the same time, what was it? Just a year or two ago, where 1 went, 0 went,
0 went a couple years ago.
Yeah, like I think some teams are getting wiser. I think 2 will at least go. I'm not sure if I believe the Jackson Dart stuff. I don't know. I haven't scouted any of these quarterbacks, so I can't say for sure, but I'm just like I'm getting it through osmosis. I don't know.
Should look at some of the comps for him.
For Jackson?
People have. Yeah, for Jackson Dart. It's not great. Like
you have the NFL.com ones, right? In your thing?
Not at all. No, mine are all varied. Some of them are mine, some of them I get from like I'll get one from NFL, I'll get one from whoever. It's like but like a lot of times someone will say something and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense." So my
Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, and people want to be like, "Oh, he's Brock Purdy." He's not Brock Purdy. He's not.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think when you try to predict trade ups and trade downs, especially if you're talking about like 20s, like, could the Lions trade? Is there anyone at 20 or 21 that might be willing to trade down? The answer is I don't know yet. No idea. Yeah. And not only do we not know because we haven't done extensive research on those teams, I think it's entirely dependent on who goes in the first 19 picks.
Yep.
And that's just it's so hard to predict. But I get the question, like I get the curiosity, and I'm sure Brad Holmes is looking into those sort of things, right? Like, who is a team that maybe needs a lot of draft picks? Minnesota Vikings.
That's where I was going. Yeah, Minnesota. We will give you our 5th and both 7ths if you flop first round picks.
But us. You have to give us next year's 6th. You have to get another pick in return. That's how these trades with Kwesi works.
Deal. I mean, it's just 4 spots, so
right.
It's probably worth it. Probably worth it for him when he only has like 3 picks or whatever it is.
Right. Like who said? Tactile Puma says next year's draft always has better quarterbacks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Every single, like, in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what you always say because they look better. And then, half the guys that you thought were going to be outstanding in 2025 hit a wall. Sometimes your Brad Kaya projected first round pick turns out to be a 7th round pick after a season. Shout out Chris Burke. That's something that the beat always teases him about. He had to do one of those right after a draft ends, projecting the following year's draft, and he had Brad Kai, I think, as a first round pick.
Well, he should have been good, but he just wasn't.
Yeah.
Who was the Oregon quarterback? Not Dylan Gabriel. There was an Oregon quarterback from a few years back who was just not good. I'm going to just look up Oregon quarterbacks. I think it was Oregon.
Joey Harrington.
No. Gosh. Vernon Adams.
God.
Do you remember Vernon Adams?
No.
All right. Vernon Adams. He was projected as the quarterback 1, according to this quarterback expert that was who's still out there. He's still out there and people still look at him and he has literally quarterback in his and he was like Vernon Adams, quarterback 1. And he went undrafted.
Oh, sorry, I started cracking up in the middle of that because I found Chris Burke's mock draft, and there's a twist in it that everyone is going to enjoy, and I feel like we need to look at it together, and I'm going to scroll slowly so we all get to see it, and I'm going to share my screen so you get to see it too. All right. Sports Illustrated, May 2nd, 2026, a 2027 mock draft. So again, he is doing this a full year ahead of time. And I will say, like, some of these are actually pretty good. So, as I mentioned, first overall, Brad Kaya to the Browns. Not great. Deshaun Watson, okay. Obviously, his career went in a different direction than it looked like, but understandable, decent.
Yep.
Cam Robinson, okay. He went high.
Mm-hmm.
Myles Garrett, great.
Yep.
Good one. Leonard Fournette, decent.
They called that one, actually. He went to Jacksonville.
Yeah, he did. He went to Jacksonville. I don't know what pick it was.
It was in the top 5. Might have been 5.
Carl Lawson. Okay. I think he went
high.
Yep.
He was a first rounder.
I'm not entirely sure who Roderick Johnson is, to be quite honest.
He was an athletic offensive tackle at FSU, right? Yeah. I think he went in the second round, but he was talked about as a first rounder for a while.
We're doing a slow reveal here.
Yeah, very.
Your Detroit Lions select.
He called it right. Just the wrong round. Man.
Tease Tabor. Beautiful. I didn't even look at the rest. Okay, there you go, Christian McCaffrey.
Go back up to what's it say? Hargraves was terrible. So was Quincy. Florida corners.
Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Allen. There you go.
Yeah, I would have rather had Allen.
Anyways, I thought that was funny.
Look, there's Burke in the corner.
What?
The auto video load was Chris Burke. Did you see it?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I missed it.
The auto video that pops up?
Yeah.
It was Chris.
Shout out
Chris. I haven't seen Chris in a while, man.
I know. I kind of wanted to pull him for the NFL draft stuff, but I haven't even reached out to him in a while. Great dude. Damian Smith, £5 super chat on YouTube says, is describing the Lions pass rush as Hutch and Friends accurate? And if so, how does it become more resilient? Thanks.
I think you might not be giving Aleem quite enough credit, but yeah, I think it's pretty fair to say that.
Yeah.
I think Aleem, you need to get Aleem healthy. That's going to be a huge help. But I think the way you improve it is you just have a rotation of like guys that are just constantly fresh on the other side. You have dedicated pass rushers plus your base ends plus your big ends, and just let Hutch stay on his one side, or you can flip him. I mean, whatever, but let him stay on the field and then just rotate through your other 3 types of defensive ends to keep them fresh, keep things, active, and keep teams guessing. And that should be a big step forward.
Yeah. And I mean, there are definitely some capable weapons out there, right? Like Levi was really starting to come on his own. There's a reason why they were thrilled to get him back at the price that they did. Say what you will about Marcus Davenport, but he was playing exactly how they wanted him through 1.5 games. And they're still going to be an aggressive blitzing team. And I think this notion that, their pass rush is just Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, that's one of the best pass rushers in the league. Like it's
like saying Dallas is only only one guy. Yeah, right. Like it's Micah and nobody else. Or the Browns it's Myles Garrett and company, because that's really where Aiden is.
Right.
Like he was headed towards defensive player of the year. And so,
And they're not a lot of teams that can pair two guys together that are elite. Even one pretty good guy, because those guys are so scarce, because of those guys are so coveted, it's hard to get a second. And if you can just support them with guys who do their roles to help give your elite guy a one-on-one, to help free your guy up in different ways, or to take advantage of their one-on-ones, then you're fine. And so it's why I've pushed a little bit against, like, I'm not saying edge isn't a need. It's a need, but it's not a place the Lions are desperate at.
I don't think they're desperate anywhere, but there are needs that are bigger at edge, guard, and receiver. Like those are the bigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would say that.
If a guy doesn't fall, if the right guy doesn't fall, they're
going to pass. Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess that's the message I've been trying to get through, is like, they're not going to force it. They're also not in a position where if they don't get an edge rusher this year in the draft in the first or second round, that doesn't mean they're not Super Bowl contenders anymore.
Yeah, all you got to do is trade for Max Crosby, and then that's a done deal.
Stop it. No, we've moved on. It's not about him anymore. It's about TJ Watt. It's about deuces. It's about deuces and TJ Watt.
If they don't draft an edge rusher in the first 2 rounds, we're going to be inundated.
Yeah.
With trade talk.
Oh, no
all
question.
Season.
Yep. People are going to
for the next year.
But they're just not going to force it. If their guy isn't there, they're not going to force it. Now, given this year's draft class, given where they're picking, I think they will pick a guy, because I think there's just going to be an abundance of guys that they're going to like, that's going to be there. But I don't think it's necessary. Why'd they trade up for TA? I mean, I think there's this misconceived notion that the Lions actively went out and got a cornerback. They were actively seeking a cornerback, and they were going to make sure they weren't going to leave that draft without a top-tier cornerback. I don't think that's how that played out. I think Terrion Arnold was the last of a top tier. He was a guy that they didn't expect to be there at all, and they're like, oh, damn, 16 straight offensive guys went off the board to start the draft, and Terrion is still there? Let's go get that dude. We like him a lot. That's one of the best defenders in this year's class to us. Let's go get him at 23 or whatever it was. I don't think that was hey, we need a cornerback. Let's get one before all the good ones are gone. I think they were just like, oh, this guy's available. We gotta get him. And then with Ennis, I think it was something similar, where it's just like, well, we don't really need a corner now, but he's pretty good.
Yeah, but it's very hard to find a corner who can play man and be strong against a run. Like, because inevitably your strong man guys are turning and running all the time, as opposed to being able to break down. Right. And that's why a guy like Devin Witherspoon was so appealing. That's why Carlton Davis was such a good fit last year. And that's why they drafted Ennis after drafting Arnold, because they were like, hey, these guys are rare. Let's grab 2 of them. Right.
Right.
And like, when you look at this year's class, there aren't many guys.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Like, you're really like the best guy. There's probably one guy who's really good at press and really good at man, or really good run defender.
Yeah.
And he's a nickel, and he's like a nickel only. And so, like, I don't know if there's not really like a clean corner who is athletic enough, is a good press man, is a good tackler. Like, that combination of traits you just don't see it right now. But last year there were 2 of them, and they took both.
Lions Blood asks, could DJ Reader be a surprise cut if they draft a defensive tackle? I would say no, because they already paid out a big roster bonus for him, right? I don't remember how much it was, but
it was like 4 to 6 million in there, something like that. Yeah.
So I don't think so. Yeah, no. Um,
Terrion's grit grade last year was a tier 3, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's not elite, but it's where you want it. It's still totally fine.
Yeah.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Lord.
How about that?
Hold on. We got a regular donation through Twitch, and it goes text to
Theoretically,
speech.
can the Lions have Penei Sewell in the building to do 1v1s with the edge prospects they bring into the facility for visits? Then, they can see if they're good or not. Or is that not allowed? I feel like
that's the best test for them to do is the end of that message. So Mateo, and since you didn't hear that, Eric asks, theoretically, can the Lions have Penei Sewell in the building to do 1v1s with the edge prospects they bring into the facility for visits? Then they can see if they're good or not, or is that not allowed? I'm fairly certain that's not allowed. So
they're not even allowed to work them out when they bring them in the building. They're allowed to do medicals and they're allowed to interview them. They're not supposed to be able to work them out.
They can't do field testing?
You can if there's
definitely no contact. Like that is definitely not allowed. And it's certainly not allowed. Like the Lions aren't even, in terms of like being able to practice on contact, that you can't do that until training camp.
No, and like a week into training camp,
right?
Right after the acclimation.
Yeah,
but I think like there's certain loopholes, but I'm not. But I, if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be just like interviews and medical tests and call it a wrap.
Yeah.
Well, my wife's home because the entire family has moved into the kitchen and they're all screaming.
But like, you could definitely like brush shoulders with Penei Sewell. He could be in the building rehabbing or whatever, and they could chat for a minute or two or whatever. But yeah, any sort of like one-on-one competition, things like that, probably not okay. Where was I? Oh, there was another question I wanted to get to. Diabetes Gator asked, while everyone is pushing pass rush opposite Aiden Hutchinson, might this be a detriment? As in, is everyone thinking of a pipe dream? We are sack kings, stop the run, intercept 4 passes a game, and break up passes. Would not a balanced approach with play and personnel flexibility be best? So if I'm understanding you correctly, like why not maybe have a guy that's a little bit more about setting the edge than a pass rusher opposite Aiden Hutchinson? I think you're 100% onto to something there. Like when they have a guy that's able to bend the edge and be speedy like Aiden Hutchinson, I think that the preference for sure is to have the crush the can type of guy, the guy that can set the edge and not be a detriment in the run game, a guy that can just push the pocket backwards so that all of the quarterback is just essentially being directed in Aiden Hutchinson's direction. Those kind of guys are also helpful if sometimes you're going to put them on the same side. And sometimes you want these big physical guys to just take out the tackle and the guard so that Aiden can loop around them. The idea of having 2 identically skilled guys on each edge, I think is pretty rare. I think you prefer to have, like you said, as much of a versatile skill set as possible because it allows you to mix up lineups. It allows you to do different things. It allows you to slide guys inside versus outside, which obviously they like to do a lot, even with Aiden. So, yeah, I don't think you just want passer. I mean, ideally, obviously, you want guys who can do both, but no, I think you're generally right. Like everyone is obsessed with pass rush because the Lions never have enough sacks. They need more sacks. They need more sacks. They need more pressure. And that was certainly true towards the end of last year.
Pressures were good last year. Yeah, but sacks were not there.
Right. And I think some of that stuff didn't pass the eye test, right? Like, yeah, I think there was a stat out there that like from week 11 on, the Lions had the most pressures in the NFL. I'm like,
Because they blitzed everybody.
Right, right. Maybe that was it. I don't think that's necessarily a sign of good pass rush. I think that that can be a sign of good coverage, right? Quarterbacks are holding on to it long. But yeah, I think when you're looking, and I think we've done, and a lot of people, I don't want to only single us out. A lot of people have done a good job of identifying the kind of traits that they want opposite Aiden Hutchinson, and a lot of that isn't pass rush. It's big, it's physical, it's crushing the pocket, it's setting the edge, it's being long-armed so you can defend the run. It's certainly great if you can do all of that and pass rush. And there are a few guys in this draft that I think probably fall into that category, but not a ton.
Couple of them where you'd gamble on their traits as opposed to production.
Right.
Like Michael and Shamar. Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart.
Yep.
Like, those are guys you're like, hey, let's gamble.
Yeah.
They're worth it.
Yep.
Someone asked earlier, and I apologize for not seeing who it was, but they asked the defensive tackle ranks, essentially. Graham is going to be the first, right?
Yeah.
He's going to be
Maybe
he's going to be off the board in a hurry. Yep. And then I have the group of Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant, and Walter Nolan all kind of in the same next tier.
Yeah.
But for me, it's Harmon, then Grant, then Nolan. I actually like Nolan's game quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think he's really talented. I just think Grant's upside is there and Harmon's upside is there. Plus he's more polished. So I think he's more instant impact. I think you get any of those three, you're pretty happy.
I'd be pretty stoked. And I've been falling more and more in love with Walter Nolan and really Derek Harmon. I haven't watched a ton of Kenneth Grant because I've been a little put off by the size, and I'm like, you're kind of hoping for Aleem, which you already have, right?
I'll take two Aleems.
Of course,
take two St. Browns.
Of course, but I feel like it's going to take you a while to get there with those guys. With Grant and Nolan, they're already more natural 3-techs and can maybe hit the ground more.
Harmon, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harmon hits ground roll. The thing with Nolan, here's your worry with Nolan. He was the #1 high school player coming out.
Right.
Goes to Texas A&M and does nothing for 2 years.
Well,
then
same with
goes
Harmon,
to Mississippi. Right? And no, Harmon was at least at Michigan State. He was a good run stuffer. They played him at the nose. He was a good run stuffer. He transfers to Oregon, loses a little weight. They play him at the 3, and all of a sudden it's like, holy, bananas! Look at the pass rush there,
right?
And the run stuffing didn't go away.
That's true.
So for me, Harmon's more complete, more ready to go. Nolan has a ton of upside. Grant has a ton of upside, and so those three, you just kind of are looking at them, and you'd say, man, what a investment that would be. And then after that next tier of guys on day 2, they're all really good at something, but they're not complete prospects. Tyleik Williams is one of the best run stuffers in this draft class, but there's no pass rush there almost at all. Darius Alexander is built like a 3 technique. He plays more like a 2 or a 4-eye or a 5. He's really he 2-gapped a ton at Toledo, and so but he was so powerful with this 2-gap that he was always he was man upping guys and then shedding them after he diagnosed the play, and that's going to be appealing to the Lions.
Sure.
But he never really was allowed to just cut loose.
Right.
Whereas a guy like Shamar Turner, then TJ Sanders, Shamar Turner, those guys are more pass rush oriented guys, right?
Right.
And then Alfred Collins, you're going back to almost run stuffing only. And then Farmer, I think, is a little bit more balanced, but the upside's not quite there. So if you're like, hey, I want a balanced guy, but I don't want to pay top shelf money, well then look at Joshua Farmer on day 2. He's got nice components to his game where he could be a really solid guy, but Farmer is kind of like the Josh Paschal in this class, where he can do a lot of things really good, but he's probably not going to be exceptional at anything, at least from what it appears. So, but he's going to be good against the run, and there's a little bit of pass rush to his game, and I think when he's not double teamed every snap, that'll certainly help him find more success too. So, but nobody else is really complete once you get past those top 4 guys.
Yeah. So draft one of those top 4 guys. Go DT instead
if
of
that's
DN.
what you want. That's the thing. Like, who knows? Like, but that could, the fact that there's only a couple of them could mean, with that copycat league that we talked about earlier,
right?
They could end up, a couple of them could be gone. I don't think all 4 of them will be gone, but I think all 4 of them could be.
Yeah. Another spoiler alert for our live audience here. Ryan wrote why the Lions should draft Walter Nolan, I believe.
No, Derek Harmon, didn't he?
Derek Harmon. I've been getting him mixed up in my head. That's right. I haven't read it over it yet, but I'm excited to do so. And he's someone that we talked about with Nick Baumgartner as well. So
here's the crazy thing. Today, you wrote the guard profile, and then in the community mock draft, it was a guard, and then I dropped my guard or my offensive line grit rankings.
Yep.
Well, tomorrow I'm dropping the defensive tackle grit rankings on the same day that Ryan is dropping that.
Oh God, who's the pick in the community mock draft? Let me see if it matches up. I don't think it's a defensive tackle. Nope. The Eagles are picking a corner. Spoiler alert. Get that Darius Slay replacement. Yeah. All right, a couple more alerts here. Grand Pac, 16 months, subscribe to the channel, says, how do you think Shep's D will differ, and does this affect draft targets?
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
it sure seems like he's going to run it back, but
yeah, just based on the guys that they retained and grabbing a backup nose tackle. Clearly going to still value the run, still going to value press man corners. You got a million special teams linebackers. Yeah.
There's some good ones in this class too.
Right.
There's a lot of real good special teams linebackers.
Nicholas, thank you for the 12 months subscribed on Twitch, says, I don't know what to say. It's draft season. Maybe get a Georgia Bulldog in the first round. So I did the guard preview today, and I didn't realize how many Georgia guys I had put on my initial list, and it's a lot.
Everywhere.
It was all 3 interior offensive linemen from Georgia last year, plus the one guy who transferred from Georgia to Jacksonville State, Clay Webb.
Yep.
And I'm just like, oh, I essentially wrote about 4 Georgia guys. Then of course, yeah, I'm all for any of the Georgia defensive linemen, I should say.
There's so many Georgia guys and Georgia transfers. Like,
yeah,
they're just everywhere. So I have a fun game that I thought you might enjoy. Because I ran across this today and I thought it was interesting. Speaking of like drafting guys from certain schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go back to 1970, Detroit has drafted 9 players from Georgia. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that ranks as the 9th most from one school. All right. So there's 8 other schools that the Lions have drafted more players from.
Oh boy.
All right.
Oh boy.
So it's tough with the realignment. Okay. But there's 2 SEC schools and 6 Big Ten schools.
Wow, really?
the top
6.
Yes. But again, you have to keep in mind realignment. But I was surprised at a couple of the schools that were so high up. And so
I feel like Penn State is high up there.
Penn State is tied for first with
Okay.
13 players. The most recent being Amani Owarie. Yes, they had 13 players drafted from Penn State in the last 55 years. So that's number one.
I feel like 3 or 4 years ago I looked. This is from like the Detroit Lions draft guide, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I should stop looking at chat because
Are they?
they're throwing in some suggestions in there. Like Alabama has to be up there. I don't know if it's top 8 though.
Alabama is tied for 5th.
Okay.
With 11, most recently being Terry Arner, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Branch, and Jameson Williams.
Sure. Yes. Heavily recently.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. A couple people put USC. I feel like that's okay.
USC is tied with Penn State for number 1.
Okay.
Last player being Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Oh, Florida's a great answer.
Yeah, it's not there though.
Really?
Yeah, Florida is.
Iowa has to be there too for sure.
Believe it or not, Iowa is 8, so they're
just
even
barely
below Georgia.
Oh, they're below
so
Georgia.
You're talking. So they're tied for 12th.
Oh, damn.
So you have Penn State and USC, which are 1 and 1, 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
You have Alabama, which is tied for 5th.
Ohio State.
Ohio State is 8th with 10. Last player being Jeff Okuda.
Jeff
Okuda. And the only Ohio State guy is Taylor Decker, who was the 4 Ohio State players drafted ago.
Mm-hmm. I want to say Michigan, but I feel like I can only think of Graham.
Michigan is 3rd, tied for 3rd with 12. Most recently, Aiden Hutchinson and Graham Glasgow.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Aiden.
Before that, Jake Rudock, Jeff Backus are the other names that you would remember.
Should have, yeah.
And then everything after that is before. Yeah. It's in the 90s or before. So tied with them, though, is the unusual one. Tied for 3rd. I was really surprised by this Big Ten school.
Wisconsin.
I asked Laura, too. That's what she guessed, and it's not. It doesn't make sense.
My thought immediately went to running back. Calhoun. Brian Calhoun. I don't know. Ooh, Purdue's not a bad guess.
It's Purdue.
Yeah.
Most recently, Derek Barnes. Before that, Cliff Averill.
Yeah.
Right? And
unfortunately, they didn't draft David Blau.
No. But
he's
that's
Purdue, right? I didn't make
so your top ones. Your top ones are Penn State, USC first, Michigan and Purdue tied for 3rd. Alabama is 5th. There's 2 more teams tied for 5th, and then Ohio State.
A couple people are putting. I'm just going to read other people's guesses at this point. Illinois.
Okay. No.
Did we get? You say we got both SEC teams or no?
No, 1 SEC and 1 Big Ten left.
Oh.
The SEC is a
big one.
Barely an SEC team because it's just joined.
Oh. Wow, that's tough for me. I don't know conference realignment. Arkansas came to mind, but all I can think about is Frank.
It's not Arkansas.
Are they even in the SEC now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Texas. Are they in the SEC now?
It is. It's Texas.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Last player being Quadri Diggs.
Oh, wow. That's been a little bit.
Yeah, 2015. And the last school is the Big Ten school. It has been mentioned a couple of times in chat.
Nebraska.
It is Nebraska. Amir Abdullah being the most recent, before him and Ndamukong Suh.
Nice.
Well, that was fun.
That was a fun little game.
Way back in the day.
Sure.
Daniel Bullocks, remember him?
Oh, God. Safety?
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking at it and I was like, man, I wonder how many of these guys are still here. And it's funny, as big of a school as Georgia is, and as high up ranked as they are, like being like in the top 10, there's none of the drafted guys that they've drafted from Georgia are still on the team. None of the
better
players
success drafting from Georgia Tech.
Yeah, right. None of the players from these are the other teams that are up there but don't have players drafted. Oklahoma, West Virginia, Colorado, none of them. No more players. But then you have like Iowa's, North Carolina State, Washington. Those are all, Tennessee, Arkansas down there. Yeah, it's fun. I thought it was a fun little,
Let me ask our live audience: how many of you guys are playing our in-5 game, our daily in-5 game on Pride of Detroit? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, say I don't know what you're talking about, Jeremy. This guy in the top right corner. This guy. Never. Let's do it right now. I could do a poll.
I didn't play today.
I haven't played it today either.
I don't.
So, what is this game like? There's a couple games out here like this that are word games. But this, so it's always in the spot on the website, this top right one. It populates new, and you can go back and play previous versions of the game. Basically, it just gives you 5 clues about a Detroit Lions player. One at a time. First one's always a position, so first defensive end, someone throws in chat is who I'm going to answer.
Cliff Averill.
Cliff Averill. That counts. Cliff Averill. Boom. Nope. A 10th round pick in 1965. I'm already of zero help.
This only plays on the Lions, right?
No.
Oh, no. I thought we were only Lions now. This is...
Okay, it is, but they could have played with other teams as well. That's what I thought you were asking.
Got it.
I don't know who Larry Hand is, but I'm going to put him. Okay, it was Larry Hand. Good job, Dragon Lion. But anyways, that's how it works. It's usually not that hard. We're kind of like outsourcing these puzzles to someone that isn't us filling them out. So sometimes you'll get these tricky guys, but like, this guy played a 13-year career with the Lions, so he's not a nobody. But I think there is a significant portion of our fans who either weren't around from 1965 to 1978 or actively tries to forget that era of Lions football. Oop, wrong button.
I have one more fun trivia for you.
Oh, okay. I do like going through that
one.
draft guide and finding fun facts.
Just focusing on Michigan-based universities.
Okay.
The Lions have drafted a handful of guys over the last 55 years.
Mm-hmm.
The most recent guy is, of course, Aiden Hutchinson.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Michigan in-state. Boom.
Yep.
The 2 guys before Aiden that were drafted from in-state schools are both still on the roster as well.
Yeah. One's Graham.
So one is Graham. And then this guy was actually drafted the year after Graham from a in-state school. And he is on the roster. It's really hard.
Drafted? Or
he was drafted by the Lions. He played at an in-state university, was drafted by the Lions. He is on the Lions current roster.
Yeah, I was gonna say Nowoski, but he
wasn't drafted.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a hard one. That's why I thought it was a good question.
Oh, Pat O'Connor. Good job, chat.
Yep. Nice
Pat
job.
O'Connor. Tricky.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't say it first. Dragon Lion did. My tattoo's been very itchy this week, and it's bothering me.
Put some lotion on it.
I have been. All right, a couple more alerts, and then I think we'll jump back into the show here. Ashkar, thank you for the 28 months on Twitch. Says, "Hey, my friends, as someone who has probably hasn't even peeped at a draft board, mock draft, or anything for over 2 months. What are we hoping to have by the beginning of next season? A solid D-line, extra secondary help?
Super Bowl championship.
I mean, I think everyone is understandably and rightfully circled defensive lineman plus guard. Like, I think you want those two players. I think you want a guy drafted highly at both those positions that might not start this year, but are slated to eventually start. That's where I think
it would be nice if they ended up getting 3 players who start in the next 2 years.
Right.
2 to 3 years out of the next 2 drafts. 3 players in each draft. If you get 6 guys in the next 2 drafts that can all earn starting roles at some point in the next 3-4 years, you will be able to afford all of the extensions that you want to do. But you have to land guys that are going to find. You can't draft Josh Pascals. Like, you gotta get a guy has a path to a starting job.
Yep.
And maybe it's in the 6th round and you get a Mahogany.
Right.
Or maybe you trade up into the 4th, and who knows. But
Joe, why do I always have a problem? Joe a Tiger. There we go. 5 months subscribed on Twitch, says Donovan. Ezeraku? Is that how we're doing it?
Ezeraku? I thought it was.
Ezeraku. Is frequently mocked to the Detroit Lions, but since mock drafts are often inaccurate, does that mean the Lions definitely won't draft him, or paradoxically, they definitely will?
It really depends. Yeah, I mean, it really depends.
Yeah.
Who's there? I think he's certainly in the mix. But, I don't think anything's, certain.
Right. Kula, 29 months subscribed to us on Twitch, says, I'm Kindle Vildor months. Let's get you to 30. Who's 30 right now?
Khalil Dorsey? He normally is. Right? That's what he was last year, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Jamal Williams, right?
Khalil's 30.
But it was Jamal Williams, right? Why do I feel like that's wrong too? Maybe it's not. Love Lion. Fool me once. Shame on you. Fool me twice. Shame on me. Nick the Greek 100 bits says, when a defense lacks interior penetration, can we call it an incel defense? Absolutely not. You can, and I would expect nothing less of you. But we ain't no we.
Not there.
They are doing an SB Nation mock draft this year. I believe it's a 2-round mock.
Yeah, we'll see if they get there.
If they get there. We have Brandon doing it for us this year. He's already made his first pick. I don't believe it's been announced publicly yet. I think they're right
I don't even
around.
know who it is.
I actually don't either. I haven't asked him. I think he's keeping it secret for funsies. Let me see.
Mm-hmm.
See where they're at. They're at 24 in terms of published picks.
Couple days.
And Kelvin Banks just went. The top remaining players, according to this article, I don't have the full list of picks that have been made, are James Pierce, Luther Burden, Donovan Ezeraku, Emeka Egbuka, and Darius Alexander. Which makes me curious what their big board looks like if Darius Alexander is the 5th best guy remaining. But hey, to each their own.
Right. Look, if it depends on what board. Okay.
Right.
If they are using just straight up PFF's board, probably right, because PFF has Darius Alexander as the 32nd best player in the draft. Of course, Todd McShay has him at 52. Reed has him at 44. Brugler has him at 61. Daniel Jeremiah has him at 47. NFL has him at 144. So
differing opinions.
Yeah. 32 is it might be a little high.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to get back into the show here. We go. How many questions are in the second segment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a full segment ahead, and then we'll close out and answer some of your guys' questions at the very end. Let's get to it. And we are back here on the Midweek Mailbag, answering your Detroit Lions questions 1 week away from the NFL Draft. Let's get back into your questions, which you can always submit on Twitter when we put out a call for it, usually early in the day, usually when the day of we're recording this, which is usually Wednesday. This next question comes from Dr. Fred Rococo, who asks, if the Lions are staying at 28, who are 3 players you do not want them selecting?
3?
Let's collectively do 3, not 3 each.
All right. I have one.
Okay, hit me.
James Pierce.
Yeah.
Tennessee. Edge rusher. I don't think that he is a good fit for the Lions at all. Could be a good player in the league. Could have 10 sacks as a rookie on a team that has an established defensive line. But he doesn't set the edge. He's not real good against the run. And there are character concerns, work ethic concerns that people have brought up. I don't know how legitimate those are, but I can tell you on the grit index, he scored one of the lowest scores we have out there. So I have seen him mocked to Detroit quite a bit. I don't see him as a fit.
Yeah, I think I think that's almost the layup answer here. Like, I mean, other layup.
That's why
answers,
I took it.
Right. I mean, like, I could be like, I don't want.
I got the easy shot.
I don't want them taking a running back. I don't want them to like. I'm not going to include those things. Like even like
right.
Jody Barron is like. I could actually make a case for Jody Barron. I still kind of don't want it, but I'm going to pass on the obvious non-need answers here and stick with maybe the positions of need. These are hard because again, like I feel like I can make a case for a lot of these guys, but
sure,
I kind of don't want to see them go any of the wide receivers. And so I'll even say, like, I don't want to see Matthew Golden. I know they brought him in for the visit. I know it has spurred a whole conversation. And listen, I know it would make sense on some level to get a speedy guy to eventually be your Jameson Williams replacement. But to me, he's not that clean of a prospect. I think some of them are getting hung up on the 40 time is like, okay, whoa, like he's super fast. A lot of people are saying that doesn't really show up as much on his tape. And to me, it's luxury is the wrong word for it, but to me, this isn't a good enough wide receiver class to warrant going at a wide receiver position where it isn't your X, right? It isn't filling an immediate need or even a need in the next 2 years. Now, if you decide to trade JMO next year, then yeah, it is whatever. But this to me, it has little to do with the player and more to do with the position he plays, the relative low need, and the fact that I think the Lions would be better served to get a wide receiver that has a different skill set.
I guess I got to get the third. This is tough for me because I spend most of my time talking about how guys would fit. Right. And I think this player would absolutely fit with the Lions, but I don't want them to draft Tyleik Williams in the first round because I don't think it's a proper use of value, even if he is the best run stuffing defensive tackle in the draft. I don't think it's a proper use of resources to draft a run stuffing nose tackle in the first round. Aleem, they got Aleem in the third for a reason. It's because there's not a premium on those types of players. I expect him to go in the second round. I don't know. He probably won't be there when the Lions are on the clock at 60 if that's where they pick. but he's a good player. He would fit. I could see the Lions taking him, but if they did, I would not like it because I don't think they would be maximizing the value of their pick.
But to be clear, you'd be thrilled with him at 60, essentially.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Like if they found a
Yeah.
way to draft him at like 45, let's
Yeah.
split the difference, right?
Trade down.
I think that's great, right? Yeah. So, but like, I don't like the pick. I don't like him at 28, even though I think he's a guy the Lions would look at and say, man, he'd be great, and he would be great. I don't think it's a proper use of value.
Speaking of picks you don't like, our next question from Carl L. K-Rock 71 on Twitter says, Dane Brugler's mock had the Lions picking a cornerback at 28 with Tyler Booker still on the board and sliding to the second round. To be clear, the cornerback that the Lions took was Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. Carl asks, what's more likely at 28, a cornerback or Booker?
Oh, I would hope it's Booker. Like, I mean, and it's not a disrespect to Dane either. Like,
Sure.
Harrison's from West Bloomfield, local kid.
Yep.
Like he had the fastest 40 time of the whole combine. He had the highest miles per hour of the whole combine. He can play press man. In my opinion, he's much better in off, and he's much better in like a cover 3. I think he's actually a perfect fit for the Rams. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams took him because he is everything that they look for in a corner. And while that used to be the type of corner that the Lions used to look for, I don't think it's the type of corner the Lions like are currently like zoning in on. He can play press, so he's going to have their attention. But I have issues with, I don't know where you're going to play him right off the bat.
Yep.
I don't know where he fits. But I mean, I get he's local. I get he's fast. I get he can do a lot of different things.
And he's got some grit to him, right? Like he can play a physical game. It's just, I mean, some of it is the size. Like he's 183.
When you look at where he's most opportunistic, it's when he's off ball. He's a lot like, I said this before. I don't know if I said this to you. He's a lot like Iffy.
Yeah.
They drafted Iffy because he was so good in off the ball skills, right? Like they were like, Iffy's off ball skills are so good that it's rare to find a guy that's that good at them. Well, Maxwell Harrison is like that. Like his off ball skills are tremendous. But like that's a Rams thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why Brad drafted Iffy was because that was a Rams thing. And then that's why when Iffy got into the scheme, they were like, yeah, we'll try him at corner. And then they were like, yeah, let's move him to safety. And because like that's how he fit. And I don't think Harrison is a guy that they're going to move to safety. Like he's going to be an outside corner. And I just don't think there's not a lot that's clean. It's a good story, but it's not really clean. Booker is clean. Like I know it's so many people are hung up on his athletic RAS score. I don't care. Like it's one piece of the puzzle, right? And if you're missing that one piece of the puzzle, it doesn't mean that like you can't see the entire picture of what the player is. Like the Booker is as complete of a player as you're going to find at pick 28. If he was there, I'd take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And again, I don't know if I mentioned this during the podcast or during our break, but we talked to Nick Baumgartner of The Athletic in a podcast that's going to be available on Pride of Detroit Direct about Tyler Booker a lot and about the speed concerns and things like that. And he said something that I think you've said in the past, which is like at that right guard position, kind of don't need it. Yeah. Like you can just be a mauler and a pass protector. And I know Booker mostly played left guard in college, but he can play right guard.
Yes.
And the Lions can give him time to play right guard. And then the one thing that I brought up is the fact that you want to look at 40 times. That's where the concern is. He had a 5.38. Remind me who played right guard last year?
Zeitler.
You want to know what his 40 time was? Way back when he was at the combine?
Probably not too far off.
5.39. 5.38 versus 5.39.
There you go. Right.
They can make it work.
Yeah, like there's just so much technique and mentality and just like that grittiness about him and just wanting to bury people and just not budging in pass pro, yet being a mauler in the right. Like, it's just, like I said, he's as complete as I think. I've heard that he could fall the round 2 as well, which would stun. It would shock me, because I think he's right. to fall to the second round because of athleticism or it just doesn't happen that often. Like you,
and let Sewell run around like crazy. It's like, you'll be fine. All right, next question. We're going to stick with the secondary here in the draft. BZ Sky or BZ Ski asked if Malachi Starks or Will Johnson is there at 28. Like some mock drafts have suggested, the Lions have to take them, right? Regardless of need, they would be by far the best player available. If Starks is taken, would you consider trading Kirby? So let's start with Will Johnson, and then we'll get to Malachi Starks, because Will Johnson is, he had the private workout this week. The athletic numbers were not impressive, I think, for a lot of people, and so there's
coming off a toe injury and a hamstring injury, whatever.
Yep. Like, and so they're concerned.
Sure.
Let's just I don't think he's going to be there at 28, but let's theoretically say that he is. Okay. Is he good enough based on most, like, because he didn't even play that much this year, and it certainly wasn't as like outlandishly good as his 2023 film was. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you're in a position there where, like, he's just too good?
Yeah, he is. He's too good. He is. He really is. Okay. Like I wouldn't. I think you're. I just spent the last question arguing why Maxwell Harrison wouldn't make sense, but now I'm saying Will Johnson would. Well, Will's a big press corner. He can play off man as well, but he can press, right? Like, that's part of what makes him really good. Both guys get most of their interceptions playing off man, which is, and he's got, I don't know, like 4 pick sixes or something like that. Like, it's something ridiculous like that.
Right.
But he has a body for physicality, and he has a mindset for to locate the ball and anticipate routes. His instincts are off the charts. He is a guy that should be absolutely drafted. If he was eligible to come out last year, he would have been a top 10 pick.
Right.
And then he has injuries and there's all kinds of problems, but he should still go in the top 15. So if a top 15 player is there at 28, you absolutely have to consider him. And that's where Starks, I think you can start talking about Starks as well, because in my opinion, I don't think Starks is necessarily going to be a top 15 player on everyone's board. Whereas I think Will Johnson will be like a top 15 player. But with Starks, there are a lot of teams that don't value the safety position as high. That's why Brian Branch fell to the second round.
Yep.
Right. It's just not a premium position on a lot of teams' NFL boards. Right. So I agree. He is incredibly talented. I agree that he is worth pick 28. But at the same time, I'm not as sure he is an auto draft at pick 28 because of, like I said, how the NFL values him and the fact that you have an All-Pro and a Pro Bowl players already in starting roles where you don't have that at corner, right? So I don't know if it's as clean. Both of them would logjam the secondary in a lot of different ways, but both are, would give you nickel options, and I think that would make that's could be how both of them would end up playing if they end up in Detroit.
I'm going to do something mean to you.
Good.
Michael Williams and Will Johnson are both on the board at 28.
I would take Michael.
Okay.
Again, because I think as much as Brad Holmes doesn't draft for need, I do think he tends to lean a little bit towards it in the first round.
Yeah, and it's like at the very least it's a tiebreaker, right? Like if you have a first round grade on both those guys,
right? And I think is going to be, I think he's going to be a top 20 pick on most boards, and I would expect him to be a top 15 player. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if the Lions maybe ranked him up a little bit higher than Will Johnson, because stylistically he fits like a glove in their system.
Shamar, same thing.
It's closer.
Yeah.
It's closer, but it's in the same line of thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The tricky part for me is like, if they do go Malachi, what do you do about your safety situation right now? Because I think a lot of people are looking at it right now and saying you're not going to pay both safeties anyway. So like, this means Kirby's gone, or this. I think fewer people are saying this means Branch is gone. And I think that eventually does have to be a conversation, right? One of those players is probably gone long term. It would just, the reason why I'm not immediately jumping to Kirby is just because of how definitive Brad Holmes has been about giving that guy an extension since the end of the season. And it would, like, listen, situations change and it's a business and all of those things, but it would represent him going back on his word for the first time ever as a Detroit Lions general manager. I
mean, it's also possible that they have a number in mind and Kirby has a number in mind and they just can't reach agreement, right?
Maybe. It's hard to say, but like I also think there's a minor chance, and this isn't me divulging any inside information because I don't have any, but like we could get a Kirby Joseph extension in the next week before the draft.
Sure.
It wouldn't surprise me.
So the final part of that question is, if they took Starks, would you trade Kirby? And my answer is no.
Yeah.
And I know that you would lose his value and by not trading him, but you are a Super Bowl contending team. I'm not interested in trading my all-pro safety for a rookie. I would rather let his contract expire, go to free agency, and then get the comp pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then just because maybe next year you're not going to be, really big in free agency, he's going to get a huge contract. He would get a huge contract if he hit free agency.
Yep.
And then maybe, you still get that value from Kirby as a player, just in a different way.
Right. And of course, like the argument for trading him is that there's a guaranteed pick there. There's no guarantee that the Lions get a comp pick. But
no, I'm with you.
But obviously, Brad Holmes is in ultimate savings mode right now, and it's hard to imagine them making a big splash on an external free agent next year that would offset that contract.
Especially with 4 extensions looming.
Yes, exactly. All right, next question here comes from Ash Soden. Asks, should we look for more quality over quantity approach with how deep the roster is, i.e. using picks to trade up on day 2 and 3 to pick 4 and 5 players who will make the roster rather than staying pat and risking making day 3 picks who won't make the 53 or the practice squad. So I can't remember when we talked about this today, whether it was on the show or in the break, but the idea of, hey, there aren't a lot of roster spots. Let's just get good players, kind of not necessarily ignore the late rounds, but maybe use those picks as draft capital to go up and make sure we get the guys that we really like on day 1 and day 2.
Mm-hmm. In my opinion, like I said, you got to walk out of this draft with at least 3 guys that you feel confident that could earn a starting role in the next couple of years.
Yeah. And
if you need to use your lower level draft picks in order to move up to acquire a guy, great. Do it. If you can stand pat and take the guys, then that's fine too. But I wouldn't start trading off assets at the if I thought it was going to cost me the ability to acquire enough players to have enough rookies on my contract to lower costs overall. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's an interesting balance. I wouldn't be afraid to use my picks, my day 3 picks this year as trade pieces. At the same time, if you can get a player that can find a spot, that's great.
Right. And sometimes as many bites at the apple is the best way to get
Sure.
3 starters. It just gives many chances as you can. And I get the consternation of like, well, if we're drafting these guys and they don't make the team, well, that was a waste. Well, you don't know it was a waste when you pick them, right? Part of the value is giving that guy a shot, giving that guy that you believe on some certain level, whether it's his traits, whether it's his attitude, whether it's his, production in college. There's a gamble you make with every single pick. And the more, and this is probably a gambler's fallacy, but the more gambles you get to make, there's a better chance that you hit on them. But in general, like, I know I'm Mr. Don't Trade Up guy. Like, it does seem to make sense to me this year where it's just like, one, they say it's not a great draft class. So maybe get in and get out as fast as you can, right? Like, that was kind of how Brad described the first round a couple years ago, right? Is like, we want to get all those picks out early and then get out and kind of coast the rest of the way. This could be one of those drafts where they try to do something like that. The other option is maybe you trade down, you get a couple early picks this year, or maybe you add to next year's draft class. Maybe you only get 2 starters this year and you get 4 next year instead of 3 and 3. Maybe if you like next year's draft class a little bit better, you take your first round guy, or maybe you trade down and take a guy in the second round. You take another guy in the second round and maybe 2 in the third round, and then you kind of call it a day and hope you can hit on some picks at the end. I think you can make, long story short is I think you can make either strategy work. I think either strategy can accomplish the things that you need to accomplish in this year's draft. But if I had to pick one, I think this year I'm actually leaning a little bit more towards get out early in this draft. 2 more
players.
Yeah. Draft good players. That's the best strategy. Next question here. 2 more left. John asks, is this regime of Holmes and Campbell an overall great success, or only if they get over the hump and win a Super Bowl? I see different takes that some say Super Bowl or nothing, or just having a consistent winning team over a span of years is a success. How do you define success, Erik?
Improvement. I define it by improvement. So this is the best roster, the best teams we've seen ever. I mean, is it safe to say ever? Like,
For
in a
most
lifetime?
of our lifetimes, for sure.
Right. To disregard what they have accomplished if they don't win a Super Bowl, I think is a bit short-sighted. Yeah. I know Super Bowl is the end goal. I know that's what you need, but like, yes, you can still have success without reaching the pinnacle. And I'm not saying that I would be like content or satisfied and be like, oh, I can retire now. As a fan because I'm so satisfied. But I am saying it doesn't have to be failure or success based on the inevitability of one game.
Yeah. I don't love this black and white thinking in general of like success versus failure. There's a hard line between one and the other. But I will say this. There was one thing that stuck out, and I think Holmes or Campbell's presser, maybe both, where they kind of define success or what their goal was here in Detroit. And obviously win a Super Bowl, I'm sure, came out of their mouth at some point. But the bigger note to me was sustained success. We want to be the Steelers. We want to be the Ravens. We want to be these teams that are in contention every single year. They don't go away. They are the model of a good NFL franchise for years and years and years. That's what I want my team to be, because that is how you're eventually going to win a Super Bowl. Now, I understand wanting that over just get me a Super Bowl could land you in like Buffalo Bills territory, where you are just constantly the runner-up, and that means a ton of heartbreak and frustration and all that. I don't care. Give me that. I don't care.
We had that anyways.
Yes. A very different version of it, but yes. And
yes.
And so has this regime reached that level of success yet? No, they haven't. 2.5 years of sustained success is not enough to be the model of consistency, to be the modern day Steelers, Packers, whatever team you want to put in there. But if they can continue keeping this team as competitive as they've been for the last 2.5 years for another 3, 4, 5 years, that is a successful reign, whether it comes with a ring or not. It is. And to me, maybe it isn't to you. I'm not going to say there is a clear, defined definition of success in this league. Some people will call it a Super Bowl. Some people will say it's sustained success. But I think us Lions fans in particular can understand how difficult it is to win in this league. And I think there are a lot of franchises out there that can understand how difficult it is to have sustained success in this league. Because even a team like, I think of a team like the Miami Dolphins, right? They were a team that's on the rise. They have this really cool head coach, this awesome offense that puts up 70 points sometimes. And where are they now? On the downswing, trading away Jalen Ramsey. Like, to me, if this team can just remain in contention and win the NFC North every other year, maybe 3 out of 4 years, whatever it is, we got to realize that is not an easy thing to do. There are not a lot of teams that can do that. And the ones that do, they typically eventually win a Super Bowl. And so that's my definition of success. And I know there are going to be people that say, oh, that's accepting mediocrity. That's basing your level of success on 60, 70 years of failure. Like, maybe. But, and I also admit, it's probably a lot easier for me to say here and say, hey, if this team loses 7 Super Bowls in a row, that's fine. That's great. I will probably feel very differently in the seconds after that 7th Super Bowl. But for now, I can say, if this team is just, perpetually a 11-win team for the next 7 years, I'm going to be pretty damn happy. Last question here. We got it from several people. I couldn't find the original question, but several people have wondered about our draft night experience, traditions, food, selections. And I think I am here to give you the sad, boring answer that we work on draft night from Allen Park and eat whatever they feed us, essentially. Are you going to be there? I haven't even asked you. Are you going to be there all 3 days this year?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. Yeah, but we're there basically from, day one is 6 p.m. till 2 a.m. It's probably
I usually get home at between 3 and 4.
Yeah. Friday is even longer than that. Saturday is even longer than that, but not as late. But yeah, I mean, and to be clear, this is not me complaining about it. I find that almost an ideal situation for me with the NFL draft, where I'm surrounded by fellow Lions beat writers. I get fed free food. We get to talk. Like, the coolest part about the draft day experience for us is that we get to talk to the draft prospect minutes after they're drafted. And now it's via Zoom. So like, we get to see the excitement on their face. We get to be the first people to ask them questions as a Detroit Lion. It's a really neat experience. And as much as it'll kind of suck for day one to be during the Pistons' first home playoff game in however long it's been.
What time does that start? Do you know? Is there a start time?
It's still TBD at this point.
That game might be over before the Lions even pick.
That is true.
It's so late.
That is true, and maybe the Lions trade out and it doesn't matter.
The whole experience could just be us sitting in the media room watching the Pistons game, waiting for the Lions to pick.
Probably true. But anyways, I do think it's a really fun night. It's long, it's tiring. Yeah. We'll put out some Pride of Detroit Direct videos that you can see the bags under her eyes, but it's a special weekend, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's fun. We've been doing this for what's last 7 drafts, if I think, right?
Yeah,
And
2018.
so,
Yeah.
before that, I mean, I know that you had a POD get together with the other writers one time.
Yeah.
I used to host a party at my house for round 1 and 2. And if I had food left over, I might have opened it up to day 3 as well. But like back when I was like younger, when I was like before I wasn't writing for a living, or I was just like doing it just like for fun, because that's what I did, because that's the type of person I am. I did this for fun.
Yeah. Nerd.
We we used to this is like pre kids and everything, right?
Yeah.
None of our friends couples had kids or anything. We were all just like young and and full of hope. And so we used to this was back when the draft was 2 days, but we used to have people over. I'd make up little index cards for each draft pick, and we'd velcro them up on the wall, like the door wall, and then we get a quarter barrel of our favorite beverage and put it out on the back porch. And the party went for 2 days, because that's what the draft was. They had draft rounds 1, 2, and 3 on day 1, and 4 through 7 on day 2. And it was just like a fun party. And the NFL's commercialization has ruined that now that it's over 3 nights in prime time. But it's always a fun event, is my point. The last 25 years, I've been celebrating this and having a good time. And it's a totally new experience, but it's a totally different experience now, but it's still equally as fun.
Yeah. All right. We're going to call it there. We are going to try, I think, I haven't discussed this with Erik. So, hey, Erik, we're going to try to fit one more midweek mailbag in here before the NFL draft next week. It'll be early next week if we do.
Oh, good. I'm not busy, so
exactly.
Lots of free time.
But I guess if you don't hear from us, then there is still a main POD cast episode that's going to be recorded Friday afternoon. If you want to be there for our pre-draft special, we're going to be talking about Brad Holmes' pre-draft press conference, which hasn't happened yet, but will happen in between now and that podcast. We'll be talking about some big questions about the NFL draft and all that sort of stuff, and plenty more. And as a reminder, we are also going to have a live stream this year for the NFL draft, as we typically do. That'll be on Twitch and YouTube, so make sure you're subscribed to us in both places to get live reactions during the NFL draft for at least the first 2 days of the draft.
Speaking of YouTube, I'm going to join Miko and Morgan to talk more about the grid index. So keep an eye on POD's YouTube page. We're gonna do a video where we talk a little bit more about it in depth.
Love that. And then on the site we've got our Why the Lions Should Draft series going. The Grid Index series is going. My positional preview is going. Might have a mock draft or two show up in the last week prior to the draft. All sorts of crazy stuff happening as we're getting closer here. So stay tuned to all of our outlets, whether it's the podcast, YouTube, Twitch, socials. You know where to find us. But until next time, it's chaos. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
Okay. I am caught up on alerts, so that means we can just hang for a little bit, chat. For a little bit.
We changed our time when we're recording. It's no longer at night. We're going to do it during the day now. So I'm excited about that.
Miko?
With Miko and Morgan, yeah.
Oh. Does that mean Miko's coming Friday?
I don't know.
I should reach out to him.
I don't know what his plans are.
You're not though, are you?
I don't know what you had set, because I had previously committed to doing the podcast, and so I was like, all right, I feel bad.
We'll talk after. We'll talk. We don't need to talk about what we're doing Friday in front of an audience. I don't want the paparazzi there.
Tell everyone where you're going to be.
I'm going to be celebrating my birthday. Go and find me.
Booker has not met with the Lions according to the information we currently have, but that does not mean he hasn't,
Right.
because it's an incomplete list.
Yeah,
For
there's
example,
not a lot of top 30s out there right now.
I just got a message from someone over at the Draft Network that told me that one of the ex-Georgia linebackers had a formal with the Lions at the Combine that we didn't know about. So he just sent me that message. So like we're still uncovering these literally as the podcast is going on. So we don't know. Maybe he met with them, maybe he didn't. It's not the end all be all that we sometimes make it out to be.
Right.
So
it's kind of why we had lower of a focus on it this year, because it's incomplete information. It's sometimes not reliable information. Sometimes
it's also information that gets skewed, right? Like, unless you're getting it from the player who's literally saying, I had a formal with the Lions, like it's easy to misinterpret what the players are saying.
Yep.
And I have seen videos that,
conflate informals with formals, top 30s with local pro days.
And the player isn't clear about what he's trying to say. And like, for example, in Tyler Booker's interview, they said, hey, who have you met with at the Combine? And he said, I've met with a lot of teams. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And that was like, he was like, I've met with almost everybody. And then he's like, I don't want to talk about it. So were the Lions amongst that group? Yeah, probably. But like, he isn't saying anything. The Lions aren't saying anything. So unless, some interview he makes and he decides to share, or an agent leaks something, like, we're not going to know.
Yeah. I will say, so I'm sure you saw this. The Rams don't do top 30 visits, and now the Jaguars don't. The Jaguars are kind of following that suit, and I didn't understand it. It seemed like a bad idea.
Yeah, I know.
But I don't know if you saw the Jordan Rodriguez article where she kind of explained the Rams' process.
It was she wrote that last year, didn't she?
Maybe. And I feel
I
like
remember,
maybe it was like refreshed this year.
Yeah, she wrote it I remember reading it last year where she talks about where she broke down like their whole process, because she talks about how they don't go to any of the Senior Bowls because they get all the tapes and stuff. They don't go to any of those bowl things because they just get everything. And I think they go to the Combine for a lot of the anemones and stuff like that. But like, their value is just they spend a lot of time doing tape and talking to prospects in other ways. And so, yeah, I remember. I disagree with it, but at the same time,
so I read this part and I thought it was a pretty interesting way to sneakily get a top 30-ish visit without having to report it to the league, because top 30 visits do have to get reported to the league. That doesn't necessarily mean they're automatically going to get leaked to the media, but it does mean that other teams might find out. So here's what Jordan Rodriguez wrote about why the Rams don't do top 30s. He says, instead, Les Snead deploys a few trusted scouts to spend a day with prospects the Rams want more information on at either the players' college or their high school if the player is in their hometown, which the NFL allows. The top 30 visits have to be reported to the league. Visits to prospects within a 50-mile radius of their college or hometown do not.
It's essentially like an off-campus top 30, right?
Yes.
Because it falls under the same rules.
But like, a few trusted scouts is not the same as, hey, meet Dan Campbell. Hey, meet Brad Holmes. Hey, go through our medical staff.
Hey, look, there's Panay Sewell in the hallway. Trying to get past him.
Right. But just don't touch him, because that's not allowed. But I think it's an interesting, like, to me, it feels a little too clever and maybe like I think sometimes NFL teams can get a little too obsessed with secrecy and just like outsmart themselves almost. But like, also the Rams they've drafted pretty well. So
Yeah.
who am I to say? Their process is working.
but-
So
There's no right or wrong way for the process to happen, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's
interesting. I just find it fascinating. Like, I don't think I'm not trying to say it's right or wrong or smart or dumb. I just think it's fascinating.
The initial comment that you had talked about not taking advantage of all of your resources.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and I agree with that. Like, if they want to do it that way, I mean, that's fine. It's like you said, they've done well, so good for them. We'll see how it continues to evolve. They have a smart GM, and whenever you have a smart GM, then
Tend to do pretty well.
yeah. Look at
I just
look at how.
I wish there was some way to quantify how important subterfuge is in the draft. Like, how important is it that the teams around you don't know who you're going to pick?
I don't think it's as much, because if you have a good pro scouting staff, you know what a team's needs are. And if you know the GMs, then you know their tendencies, even if they try not to have them. And so when you look at the team's tendencies and you look at the needs and you look at the style that they're of offense or defense that they're running, like, it's one of the things that makes Brad so good at what he, so good at his job, is because he understands and can predict, like, what's likely going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, it's countless times. It's jumping ahead of Howie Roseman for Aleem McNeil because they wanted Aleem. It's jumping ahead of the Packers to get Brian Branch.
Right.
It's waiting on Amon-Ra.
You can't hide your depth chart, right? Like,
right.
You can't hide your defensive schemes. You can't hide the tendency of height, weight, 40 time that you prefer. Those things are out in the public.
Yeah. And teams are going to look at the Lions and they're going to be like, well, there's a lot of guys that aren't on their board, probably like James Pierce. And so, like, we can just say, oh, they're probably not going to pick him. But if
Here's
the
the real
Lions
question.
pick him, I'm going to look so bad.
The real question is, with your expansion of the grid index and you're pushing it, multiple articles of it this year, why are you hurting the Lions' secrecy into what kind of players they like?
Dude, you would be shocked how many people said that to me.
I've gotten that before, and I'm like, not for the draft, obviously, because I'm not that in depth on the draft, but like for other stuff, like, stop saying this about, like, stop revealing the Lions' secrets. Other teams are going to see that.
There's a lot of people that get paid more than I do,
right,
that work for other NFL teams that have probably done a bigger and broader search than anything I've done. Like, I'm just trying to rationalize it for the audience. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because it's interesting to me, and if it's interesting to me, I assume it's interesting to someone else, and so
yeah, probably 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, and so. That's what I do. I do it for the 2 or 3 people that care.
Who would you... Is Pierce, like, in a category of him on his own of, like, guys that would be a shock to you in terms of, like, fit?
I actually... Yeah, I mean, he would be surprising to me because of the character... but also stylistically, the way he plays on the field, that would be surprising to me. At the same time, if they're really, really prioritizing pass rush, like, yes, pass rush, like, it's there. But, like, for what he does, right, and what he does well, and what he lacks, I see that as like a 2nd-round pick, kind of like with defensive tackles, where I talked about if you're a complete player, you go in round 1. If you're a specialist, you go you're gonna go later. If you're really, really good at the one good thing that you do, you go in a second. You'll go in the second round. That's kind of where he falls for me. Like I think he's probably a guy who will go in the top 40, 50. But if I'm the Lions, like, would I take him at 60? I feel a lot better taking him at 60.
Right.
But again, you're talking about taking a guy who specializes in like kind of one thing for the style of that defense that you run. So I have him down a tier. And I'm wondering how far I'm going to drop him down when I start comparing apples to apples versus like some of the other prospects that are out there. Because right now he's kind of in the same tier. He's a tier below like the Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart's, Mike Green's, Ezra Rockwoos. He's below that. And I'm trying to see how many guys. I'm still fiddling with it a little bit, but I don't know how far down he'll slide, but it just doesn't. It would be surprising to me. The other one would be like if Brugler was like, if he was accurate, and it's like Maxwell Harrison, like that would surprise me because I'm like, I don't see how it works stylistically. He's not a perfectly clean fit, and if you're going to take a player at a position where there's not a clear path to a starting job, he better be a clean fit, and and Harrison isn't. Or so I don't know. It's that those couple would surprise me. If they took like Josh Simmons, like the Ohio State tackle, like can he play guard? Probably. Is he a better tackle? Yes.
Yeah.
Like
those the guys that are pure tackles on day one or day two seem like tough sells.
That would surprise. Right. Like Kelvin Banks is going to be, I think he can do both. He'd be fun.
Yeah.
Simmons, I think Simmons could do it, but I think he's a better tackle than he would be a guard. And so you're going to play him out of position for his rookie year, plus coming off an injury. Like it would surprise me just because of the obstacles that are in place.
Cody wants to know your draft crush like you've had with Witherspoon, Darnell Wright.
I have a couple different guys that I like at different spots.
Booker feels like the guy that you're pushing for the hardest right now.
Booker tends to be the guy that just seems to fit the most. But like, I really like Michael Williams. I really like
my guy,
Derek Harmon.
Yeah.
So those are like my kind of top couple of guys that I think are realistic for the Lions.
Yeah.
Like this doesn't mean like I don't like Gray Zabel or Donovan Jackson. I like those guys plenty. I just like Booker more.
Yeah.
I think Derek Harmon's going to be my next tier after Graham. Like he's going to be the next guy after Graham. I think Michael Walker is just a clean fit. Those are probably like my top three, like of realistic guys that I really, really like.
Yeah.
There's other guys I really like. Like I like Starks, but I just don't see it's not as clean of a fit.
Yep.
Right. I also like Jonas Sanker, who you can get in round 3 or maybe 4. Yeah. Right. So I think he's a great fit. I think if they take him in a 3rd round, I'll be like, makes perfect sense. So I have a handful of guys that I like really, really like, but if you're talking 1st round realistic, I'm really down to like Booker, Harmon, Michael.
Lions Blood asks, why is Brett so against Michael? He was on YouTube, our YouTube page. He chatted with Miko about that, so I would suggest going back and watching that, because I can't speak for him otherwise. Good question from Lions Blood. Does Laura get jealous when Erik calls out Booker's name in his sleep?
Dude, I don't sleep, so. Do you know that?
I was talking with someone specifically about you and Laura, and we both wondered how in the world you function, both of you.
I don't know. I don't know how I'm doing it right now. What's going to happen is I'm going to get to a point. It'll probably be like Wednesday before the draft, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to bed at like 7, you know. But so the thing right now is I'm so task oriented. Like my mindset is so I need to finish this task in order, and I really want to get the board done. So I've been like just inputting, and I can stay up from like 9 to like 1, just like putting data in because I'm getting these sense. When I complete a position, I get a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah,
right.
little
And I'm like
adrenaline rush.
I'm right at that right. I'm just at that. I'm right at that finish line now, and so it's like. I just need a couple more final rankings from some guys, and I just need to adjust my players, and then I just need to reset the color stuff, and then it's like that'll be it, and then I can send it out. But I still am waiting on a couple of analysts to get their stuff in. But I'm starting to move guys now. I'm starting to get, starting to like I said, I'm starting to compare those apples to apples, and I'm going to go, and it's when you're OCD, it's like someone gives you a list of chores and you're literally taking a black Sharpie and just crossing them off, right?
Yeah.
Like that's quite literally what I'm doing.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
Here.
we get to 9:00 during these podcasts, and I'm just ready to keel over because I'm so tired because I'm an old man that prefers to be in bed by 9:30. But I to defend myself, I'm usually up and writing by 6 in the morning.
Yeah, I don't actually get to sit down in front of a computer until I get my first wave of children out the door, and then before I need to wake them up. So I get like a small little window in that 7:00 hour, and then it's not till 9 again. So yeah, but I can get a lot done once those kids go to bed. Man, I get a lot done when I'm not when I'm not getting asked a million questions.
All right, last one, and then I think we'll get out of here. Krolik asks, why do you have Michael Williams over Shamar? And to be fair, I think you said they're pretty damn close.
Yeah, I think they're close. It's a matter of, I think he comes in a little bit higher on the grid index. I think his ceiling is a little bit higher, even though he's not as athletic, right? Because like Shamar just scores out the chart athletically.
Yep.
And I think stylistically, I like that position at Georgia. I always kind of have like that position at Georgia. It's one of the reasons why, like I've mentioned this before, why I like Trayvon Walker when he came out. Shamar, though, I mean, he's a scary guy. Like when he makes an inside move and he gets like puts weight on people, like he brings some heat.
Yep.
So I just don't think those flashes are as consistent as I would hope.
Right.
But his ceiling might actually be a little bit higher. I also think Michael's just put on the island, please. But I think Michael's floor is a little bit higher too. So it's just a little bit more. It's not a ton more. It's a little bit more.
All right. I think we're going to get out of here. Oh, the Pintar. Thank you for the 21 months on Twitch as well. Sorry, I almost let that one slip through. Sorry. Steve's coming.
Bless you.
Okay.
Double
so,
bless you.
rest of the week. Friday, 3 p.m.-ish, Lions Draft Preview POD cast. That's going to be the last POD cast before the NFL Draft. Maybe a midweek mailbag Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe.
Oh, I don't know, man. I got to look at my schedule here. To be honest, I haven't thought past the next couple of days.
That's fine. I know you're incredibly busy. I'm cramming stuff. I don't think we're going to do a mock draft stream, to be honest.
Look, we have Easter this weekend. I don't like. Did you mention that it's your birthday coming up here too? So that's getting factored in as well. There's a lot going on in the next 8 days.
Yeah.
So that
Brad Holmes presser.
Yeah.
I do some stuff for the newsletter, including something that I don't want to do, but I'm going to.
Ooh, sounds tricky.
Yeah. Anyways, that's kind of the schedule moving forward. Again, there will be a live stream during the draft. Erik and I might be on it after the Lions pick at some point in the night, but it won't be run by us because we're going to be busy doing work.
Watching Pistons. Oh, yeah, doing work. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Shut up. Don't tell them. But yeah, if and then I should mention this too. I should have mentioned that on the show, but the midweek mailbag after the draft is technically the last midweek of the month, which means that is going to be a Pride of Detroit Direct exclusive. So if you're not already, prideofdetroit.com/subscribe to make sure you get all the midweek mailbags, all of the First Bite episodes, all of Ty Schulter's contributions. He's got one coming out tomorrow morning, I'm fairly certain. I read it over. I very much enjoy it. He had an awesome one last week. Did you see it, Erik? Because I bet you would have loved it.
Was it the one about the Packers one that he wrote?
Yep.
Yeah. I have it in my email. I have it starred in my email so that I know I can go back and read it. I haven't read it yet.
What, you've been busy?
Just a little.
Anyways, pridedetroit.com/subscribe if you want to help support us and get a bunch of premium content. Premium. We almost called it Pride of Detroit Plus.
That almost sounds disrespectful.
To everyone who writes for Pride of Detroit?
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah. It'd be like calling the best podcast show on the platform the main show.
Mm-hmm.
That would be disrespectful to the other podcasts on the platform.
I'm glad you agree now. You're on my side.
I guess if you spelled it Mane, that would be different, but
all right, we're gonna get out of here. See you guys Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern-ish for our big blowout Pride of Detroit NFL Draft preview show. But until then, have a good night. Go Tigers. Go Pistons.